This is Kick-Ass Kyle Storm, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. You like independent wrestling? You like women's wrestling? Hardcore? Shoot interviews? Check out Chop's videos. You'll love what you see.
What's up, guys? Teddy Goods here, and for all of you who are junkies of early 90s independent wrestling, especially from the New England area, I need to let you guys know about Chop's videos on YouTube. I am a subscriber, and I watch his videos frequently. Tons of NEWA stuff, Tony Rumble stuff, CWA, Primal Conflict, just all kinds of hidden gems. A few matches of myself early in my career, so check it out. Chop's videos on YouTube. Have a good one, guys.
Chatting with Chopper here. I'm here with the famous Dave Livewire Padula. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great, Chop. How are you?
I'm great. Long time, Dave.
Been a long time. 20-something, maybe about 20 years.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this almost that long, sit down and get this interview done.
We have, and that brings me to a question. Why? You have such a wonderful reputation as a fan back in the early 2000s. You're building a tremendous reputation now by posting videos of the boys that we haven't seen in years. You posted videos where I don't even remember wrestling in the matches. You're doing so much for the New England wrestling, the wrestling community. Why would you want to bring me on your show?
You're live effing wire.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
How many of your matches have I filmed?
A lot.
How much of it have I seen? You know what I mean? How much have I been there for? How much entertainment have you brought me?
Hopefully a lot.
A lot. Why would I ask you to interview you?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being here. You're a big part of New England, Dave, whether you want to admit it or not. You brought hardcore, you and a few others. I don't want to discount them, but you're a big part of what brought, hardcore to New England and brought what fans really wanted around this area, brought it to them.
And that will be spoken about today. And it's kind of a funny story how a bad decision on my part turned into something positive years down the road, but we'll get to that.
We will get to that. We'll go back and start from the beginning and we'll get to how that came about. But I just don't want to discard that you are a big part of New England, especially New England hardcore. and I'm going through all them guys because I was right there. Primal was a big part of that, and I was right in the mix with a lot of that stuff. Me and Evil Ed and the Mock Squad and all of that. And you were right in the focal point of that. So let's go back to the beginning. How did you become a fan of professional wrestling, or what is your first memory of professional wrestling?
First memory, December 1978. On the weekends, I would always stay at my grandparents' house. My parents would drop me off on a Friday night, and I would stay there until Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon, I'd get picked up, be brought to my other grandmother's house for Sunday dinner with the family. And that would be every weekend. This one particular weekend, I was at my house. I didn't get to my grandmother's house for some reason that weekend, but the Saturday morning, I woke up late. I went downstairs. My mom was washing dishes. I went to turn the TV on to watch some, Saturday morning cartoons. But because it was like 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, cartoons went on. Instead, what I saw was a wrestling ring, a boxing ring, I'm sorry, because at that point, I didn't know what wrestling was. My grandfather would always, sit me down and watch sports with him on the weekends, and we would watch boxing a lot. So what I saw was boxing ring, a guy dressed up as a cowboy, and a guy naked in his underwear being chased by this cowboy. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but because the cowboy was beating up on this guy in his underwear, I kept watching, and out of nowhere, it's like the cowboy took his hand and he started squeezing the other guy's head, and he started bleeding. I was mortified, but he couldn't stop looking. They put a big red X on the screen. the somber voice of the commentator, who was Vince McMahon at the time, was like, "I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we have to show you this footage. If there's any small children in the room at this time, you might want to turn them away from the screen." And I was staring at the screen watching this, and my mom's like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "I don't know, but this guy's bleeding by this cowboy. And he's in his underwear. I don't know what's going on." That's exactly how I said it. So my mom says, "I don't want you watching this," and shut it off. That later that day, I told my dad about it. He says, "Oh, that's professional wrestling." I'm like, "What is this?" And he explained it to me. And of course, the gentleman that I watched in the ring at that time was Blackjack Mulligan. Didn't know who he was. But later on, I found out who he was, and it was a wrestling ring, not a boxing ring. He was a cowboy, and the guy that was in his underwear was just some enhancement talent. But I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what I was watching. A couple weeks later, my dad took me to Jack Ritchie's Sports Arena in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, where Vince McMahon's father ran shows. It was the WWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And we went in there for a little bit, and I didn't know who anybody was. There were just these gigantic men that were just beating up on each other. There was one gentleman who looked like a little Bonnie Rubble type of guy. 15 years later, he became a very important part of my wrestling career. That was Savannah Souza. The times that I would go to Jack Ritchie Sports Arena, Savannah Souza would always get in that ring, make an attempt to fight, win a match, but he always lost. He would get his head busted open, and he'd be back the next week to fight. And I really was drawn to that. He like, "Oh my God, this guy can't win a match, but he won't give up." To be honest, that was kind of like the last I saw of wrestling for a couple of years. So this was 78, 79. I would go to some the Jack Ritchie shows. 81, my parents divorced, and me and my mom moved to Pennsylvania. And out there, we moved to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Allentown, where Vince Jr. would run a lot. He would do TV tapings there. So it was on TV a lot. At the time, you had Big John Studd doing the Buy Slam Challenge, $10,000 to anybody who can buy slam them. And I would watch that every week, watching, like Joe Green from New York try to buy slam on, Big John Studd. Like, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. Oh, he almost got it. Damn you, Bobby Heenan. And that, I was hooked. I didn't think about becoming a wrestler at that point. I just was drawn to the action, to the drama, the suspense, and the storytelling.
Mean Joe Green. I remember him going down to world class too, a couple of years, like at 82, 81, 82. He went down to world class for a little while.
And I didn't know about world class. I didn't know about the AWA. I didn't know about NWA. I didn't know about the Savolis. I only knew about WWF, and then became WWF. I'm sorry. My grandmother would take me to the pharmacy or the convenience store down the street, maybe a couple times a month, and I would get Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I would get The Wrestler, and it was one more magazine. And they was like, "Wait a minute,
Inside Wrestling, maybe."
It was probably Inside Wrestling. Bill Apter was one of the main gentlemen.
Mags, yeah.
And that's where I learned all these different other companies. There's
We
more
all
wrestling.
learned about them. Yeah.
And I kept buying these magazines, and what I didn't see on WWF, I saw a lot in these magazines, and that was Billy Graham, Abdullah the Butcher. They would talk about the Sheik. They would talk about the sheep herders.
The sheep herders, yeah. It'd
Uh,
shock you. You'd see them pictures and be like, "Oh my God!" You'd see Puerto Rico and stuff. Carlos Colon.
and it was the violence,
Yeah.
because all these guys they did violent matches. 1984, it might have been 83, but 84, they put out the very first pro wrestling VHS tape, The Lords of the Ring.
Yep.
On that tape, there was a match.
For like $60 or whatever it was, plus $20 shipping or whatever it was. $24.99 shipping, I think.
$49.95 for the tape, or $59.95 for the tape, plus like $20 for shipping. I was
Yeah.
like, I gotta have this, and I got the video. And that match between Piper and Valentine, the dog collar match, was insane. I was addicted.
there was two of them, right? Lords of the Ring, and
There was
that
one
company
right
came out with 2 tapes.
Yep, and I think the second one had the Starcade stuff.
Yeah,
You gotta remember, my mind.
mine too. Yeah,
I have a
for
bad
different
memory.
reasons, but mine too.
But as I watched, I read about these guys. I was like, I would read Bill Apter's write up stories, and even though I couldn't watch it anywhere on TV, I could visualize, and I knew what was going on by reading the stories and stuff. I discovered World Class. It was just before David passed, David Von Erich, and I think the Freebirds attacked the Von Erichs, and I was like, oh, WWF has another show, and then I realized this is World Class Championship Wrestling. Oh, a different show. And to me, World Class was professional wrestling, but not the same as WWF. WWF, you had characters. You had WWF was more gimmicky, as I would say now. But back then, I was like, well, this is professional wrestling, but these are more badasses. The Freebirds. You had Gino Hernandez, Christopher Adams. It was a different Iceman King Parsons. It was a different group of people that were different from what I was watching with WWF. So now I would watch WWF and World Class Championship Wrestling. Then one Saturday, I'm flipping through the channels and I see this advertisement for, I think it was NWA Wrestling at the time. And it was like, come check us out, 6:05 p.m. I'm like, why 6:05? I was like, and that drew me to that. I was like, why not 6 o'clock?
I was gonna say that was almost a catch to draw you in, that it was so odd that it was at 6:05.
Exactly.
And Iceman is so underrated to me. Iceman.
He was so entertaining, that his dancing, his personality, and it was the same thing with the Junkyard Dog. Junkyard, before he got into the ring, I was entertained.
Junkyard Dog got so much more credit though than Iceman. I think Iceman didn't get the credit that Junkyard Dog got.
Exactly. Totally agree.
Because he went to WWF and Iceman never did. I think that's why.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, I never really understood territories. I didn't understand the companies. I just knew this, wrestling. When the Dingo Warrior came into World Class, and then he became the Ultimate Warrior in WWF, I was like, oh, that's not the same guy. And, like friends would be like, we're going to get to my friends in a second. My friends be like, oh yeah, it is. He just changed. I said, no. That's the Dingo Warrior is World Class. This is the Ultimate Warrior. Kind of the same name, but different guy. Looks the same. And they're like, no, he just went to a different company. I'm like, no, he wrestles for World Class. I didn't get it. I was so stupid.
So you didn't discover World Class till the Von Erich feud and Freebird feud was already long underway.
Yes. I'm not sure if Christopher Adams was with Gino. I know Christopher Adams was with Gino Hernandez shortly after, because I know Adams was the baby face first, and then he went with Gino.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of exactly what time period that was, but then it was
He went
shortly
with Gino. I believe it was 85.
Was it
early 85? I want to say.
Okay, because I remember
Freebirds turned on the Von Erichs in Christmas of 82, and their feud went right to like 86.
Okay, because I remember David passed away a couple weeks later.
David passed away in February '84.
Okay. Oh, you're good with dates. You're better than me.
Well, yeah, well, especially with the Von Erich stuff, and
Yeah.
you got to figure I'm going through tapes of this stuff all the time recently because of the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
That's the only
And
reason I know these dates.
the when they did that, David passed away, and then they did a show, but it was the empty arena, and each wrestler did a little memorial to David. And when Jimmy Garvin, I think he was with Precious at the time. I couldn't stand him. I hated Jimmy Garvin, the flamboyant, everything. And then when he did this interview of, we call it shoot interviews nowadays. It was, being out of character, and he was saying this. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it was just, I watched it more and more, and it was, I want to say trying to think of the years, 86 or 87. Andre just got his hair cut by Big John Studd and Bundy.
That was earlier. That was probably '84, maybe '85, probably '84.
84 would have been WrestleMania when he got slammed. And Hillbilly Jim was in at this time.
Oh, that was '85.
So it'd be 85.
WrestleMania 1 was '85. WrestleMania 2 was '86. WrestleMania 3 was '87 when he got slammed.
Oh, John Studd? That was WrestleMania 1. Andre slammed Studd WrestleMania 1, and Bobby Heenan Andre was throwing money.
Yeah.
So
WrestleMania 3 was Andre slamming him. I had Hogan slamming him. I was thinking.
Oh, yes, exactly.
So we're just talking two different things. Yeah.
So it's okay. But it was the time when Andre got his hair cut, and
Patera and Misty Jones.
Yeah, they were doing the tours, and it was a Saturday afternoon. My dad took me to the Providence Civic Center for one of the house shows, and the main event was King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd against Andre and Hillbilly Jim. And after the match, I was sitting in the back hallway in the backstage area because my dad was talking to some people he knew there, and Andre walked by, and I've been around celebrities before, bands and stuff. Always ask for an autograph politely. And
how old were you at this age? How old were you at this date?
If it was 85, I would have been 13. If it was 86, 14.
About, you don't have to be exact.
Yeah, about 14. And when Andre walked by, I said, "Excuse me, Andre, can I have an autograph?" And he just walked by me, didn't look at me, and he said, "Sorry, no time." And he went off to his car. So I'm just sitting there saying, "Hey, no big," he was polite about it. He didn't say it in a mean way, but so right after he leaves, Big John Studd comes over. He's walking out, and I'm like, "This is Big John Studd." He just, for Andre, I don't want to say nothing to this guy, but he stopped and asked me, "Hey, did you enjoy the matches?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Why do you look down?" And I'm sitting there like, I'm looking down. I'm not looking at John Studd. So, because I asked Andre for an autograph and he said he had no time. And Big John Studd chuckles and he made a comment like, "Well, he had a big match today and he's got to wrestle tonight. So maybe next time he'll give you an autograph." I said, "Yeah, maybe." He goes, "But if you want, I can give you my autograph." I was like, "Oh, sure." And he signed my, my book and stuff. He was waiting for somebody to walk him out to the cars because they had the way the Civic Center was at the time. The fans could actually get into the parking lot area, so he wanted someone to walk him outside. And my dad ended up walking Big John Studd out. So as we're walking them out, and people are booing him and saying stuff, and saying he sucks, and he's just being normal. And he puts his stuff in his car and he thanks my dad and he shakes my hand. And I was like, "Oh, why are they saying such mean things to you?" And he laughs. He says, "Well, if they didn't, then I wouldn't be doing my job." And at that time, I says, I get it now. I get it. Because I expected him to be mean, rude, and he was such a nice guy. And the conversation, we had a little conversation on the walk out, and he was just like talking to a friend. And when he said that, you know, if I wasn't doing my job, if they weren't booing me and saying I sucked, then I wouldn't be doing my job. And that's when me and my dad walked back to the car, and I say, you know what? I want to be a wrestler when I grow up, and I want to be a bad guy. And that was the whole, you know, that was at the moment where I wanted to be a wrestler. Now, when I was talking earlier about my friends, Stubby Steve Stallion, we actually met when I was 6 years old. He moved into my neighborhood, and we lived maybe about 4 or 5 houses down from each other. And at that time, there was 2 things. We had just met when I was 6, turning to 7. So at that time, I was a huge, huge music fan. I was taking drum lessons. I was a huge Kiss fan. That was my favorite band. Then I got into wrestling, watching wrestling. And Steve Stallion was the only person that I knew at school or in my neighborhood that liked wrestling and Kiss. So we hit it off right off the bat. At that time, when you went to school, if somebody said, hey, you know, what'd you do this past weekend? And you said, oh, I went to a wrestling house show in Providence, they would make fun of you. It wasn't accepted to be a wrestling fan. So at that time, until I got into maybe junior high school area, we didn't have a lot of people to discuss wrestling with. You know, we didn't have the internet where you can go on forums and stuff. So me and Steve were always close friends. We went to house shows together. Steve was the fan of the bad guys. Piper, he was a huge Piper fan. I was more of the Hogan type fan. So we had that dream that, you know, when we grow up, we're going to be wrestlers. So come around November 1992, I hadn't seen Steve Stallion for a couple of years. And there was a show promoted down in Cranston West High School. And I said, you know what, you know, I'm going to see what this wrestling show is about and maybe ask somebody how I can get into the business. When I got there early, when they were setting up, Steve Stallion comes out and says, Padula. And I was like, dude, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I wrestle. I'm like, oh, you know, how do I get in? And he goes, hey, I'll introduce you to the owner. And he introduced me to Dave Jackson. Dave Jackson was the owner of the NEWA. He was known under the ring name of Chain Link at the time. And then later on, he changed his name to Reverend Brannigan. When I was introduced to Dave, he's like, you know, happy-go-lucky guy. And he says, hey, you know, nice to meet you. I was like, you know, I want to get into wrestling, but I don't know what to do. You know, there was not, you know, not nowadays you can find a wrestling school on every street corner, or check on the internet. But I knew about Killer Kowalski's school, but I didn't know where it was, how to get there. So Dave says, like, listen, he goes, if you want to help out tonight, do you know how to use a video camera? And I was like, yeah, sure. So he wanted me to tape the matches. And to be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about video cameras. But I spent 4 hours asking everybody how to use this thing. And so I videotaped the matches and stuff like that. And then a couple months later, Dave sold the company to Rock D'Alessandro. And then Rock D'Alessandro became the owner of the NEWA. He got a gym down in Manton Avenue in Providence. And that's where we all just got a ring. It was actually a real boxing ring. And that's where we learned how to wrestle. And I put the learned in quotation marks because it was like the blind lead and the blind kind of. And that's no disrespect to anybody that was there. But we really didn't know how to protect ourselves and be safe working. The first time being in the ring, I was nervous. I didn't like falling on my back. I didn't like tumbling forward. So I went outside the ring and I said to Steve Stallion, I'm like, dude, I don't think I can do this. I said, I'd rather be a manager or something like that. And he goes, all right, well, no, whatever you want to do. And then this kid, Brent Barrett, asked me to go in the ring with him to, work on some stuff, and I did. And we did a combination of what everybody calls now spots. And Steve Stallion took me to a side. He goes, "You got to wrestle." He goes, "You're at the time I was about 240 pounds. I'm doing, sunset flips, going to the top rope, no problem." So I said, "All right, I'll stick with the wrestling." And I did a couple of matches. Me and Brent did a couple of matches. And the one match we did in Taunton, Massachusetts, I thought it'd be a brilliant idea to bleed in front of, I don't know, 50 people. So this was the biggest lesson I ever learned was you don't do something in a match, especially like bleeding, without clearing it with the promoter, the booker, the owner of the wrestling company. So me and Brent go out, we do this match, and he takes my head, he rams it straight into the pole. I go down, I come up, and I am drenched, just bleeding like profusely from head to toe. Because I'm thinking, Abdullah the Butcher, the Sheik, from reading the magazines and stuff like that, that drew money. People love that. The fans went crazy for that. When we got in the back, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great." People are gonna say, "Oh, great job." And we get in the back, and all I did was get yelled at. Like, "Are you stupid? What are you doing?" And I kind of got suspended from what, I don't know. But I didn't wrestle again for about 6 or 7 months. And then at the end of that, they wanted me to wrestle some more. And I just told them, I says, "No," because I felt so down because of the way they spoke to me. I just said, "You know what? I don't want to wrestle no more." So I would go to the wrestling shows and help out, set up the ring, whatever. I would wear a suit during the shows and just go out in the crowd and kind of mingle with everybody. Like, "Hey, how's everything going? How you folks doing? Having fun?" And then one night we did a show in Providence. I think it was like actually, it was probably about this time of the year, St. Joseph Festival. And they needed somebody to fill in to wrestle the Wolverine. And I was like, "You know what? I'll do it. I'll put a mask on and something like that." And it's called getting the bug. You hear a lot of guys that haven't been in the ring for a while. And once you go back in, it's like, all right, you want to start wrestling again. So I had a million different names. I would always use different characters because I never really felt who I was. Like if you watch the WWE now, they're like, "Who are you? What is your persona?" And at that time, I had no idea who I was or what I was doing. The Livewire name that I originally started out with, that was given to me by a band I had worked with, a rhythm and blues band called Black and White, still around today. And Donnie DiMuccio, the drummer, I was saying, "You know what?" I says, "I'm trying to think of a wrestling name, and I just can't figure out anything." And he says, "Why don't you use Livewire?" And it was a song off their cassette at the time. And it had like this Batman. If you remember Johnny B. Bad in WCW,
Yeah.
Johnny B. Bad had a song, had a dun 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 piano song, sounded like a Batman type song. And that's what the song started out with. And the words described a average everyday working guy who was mild mannered, but when he get pushed, he exploded. And they're like, "Dave, that's you. You're very calm, you're quiet, but if somebody pushes you, you explode." So I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." But in wrestling, it just didn't fit for some reason. I don't know. And so I kept changing characters. There was this kid, Chris, who unfortunately we just lost to cancer last September 2021. He was going to be called the New Jersey Brawler. And then Rock said, "Oh, why don't you tag up with him? You'll be the Jersey Brawlers." I was like, "That'd be cool." And then Chris got hurt. He had some injuries and stuff like that, so he couldn't work. So I took the name Jersey Brawler. I asked Chris, "Do you mind if I work under the name Jersey Brawler? And then when you get better, we'll tag." He's like, "Yeah, it's cool." At this point, there was a show at Warwick Vets High School. We had Virgil on the card. We had Greg Valentine at the card, and we're in the dressing room, and some Bob Cleese, he was the ring announcer. He comes up to me. He says, "Hey, who's this guy in the locker room?" He goes, "Can you go find out who he is?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I go up to him. I say, "Excuse me, sir, how are you?" I say, he goes, "Good." I says, "Something I can help you with." Because I don't want to go up to him and say, "Yo, we got to get out of here." You have no idea who this guy is. And luckily I didn't. He introduced himself as Silvano Souza. And I was like, "Silvano Souza, not the same guy who wrestled at Jack Ritchie's?" He goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Dude," I says, "my dad used to take me to the Jack Ritchie shows, and I used to watch you all the time. You got your ass kicked, but you always came back the following week. One week you get your head put through a windshield outside as you guys fought in the parking lot. You came back the next week. Like I was like, I always watched you. Like you're so good." And so we became friendly. He was with Steve Bradley at the time. Steve Bradley was just coming through. Steve Bradley might have been working about 2 years prior to this. And Silvano Souza spoke to Rock about coming in and training some of the guys, because he's like, "You guys have got potential. You just need some, some training, some polishing." So this was about the end of 94, early 95. Silvano Souza came in, trained with us with Steve Bradley, but I was still stuck in the NEWA. And Bob Costa was a referee, and he was refereeing in Massachusetts, companies in New Hampshire. I said, "Bob," I says, "how do I get out of here and wrestle for these companies?" And he kind of he didn't put the idea to, he didn't shoot down the idea, but he's like, "Listen," he goes, "you guys have free reign here to do whatever you want to do. Once you go to work for these companies, they tell you what to do." And in a way, I felt more comfortable with that. Steve Stanley got in touch with a guy in Salisbury Beach, Massachusetts. Rip Morrison. Rip Morrison was a local worker trained by Jeff Costa. So Rip Morrison, Big City Mike, John Callahan, Sonny Goodspeed, they all had this thing on Salisbury Beach, right on the boardwalk. They had what's called Champs Arena. I don't know if you remember that.
I've heard of it. I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard people talk about it. That's
It
not
was
the Lobster Man stuff, right?
No, that's Jeff. Oh my God.
Okay. No, we'll get to that.
The
We'll
stories.
probably touch on that later.
Okay. This was Big City Mike and John Callahan. They owned this building right on the boardwalk. The front of it was a shop for wrestling. They sold wrestling tapes, wrestling memorabilia, T-shirts, and stuff like that. And then on weekends, they would hold wrestling shows.
What
And
year was this? About what year was this about?
1995.
95. Okay.
So we went
Well,
up
I
there.
never heard of a wrestling tape shop or anything like that back then.
This was a gold mine. This was
I
an
bet.
absolute.
I would have drove up there if I knew about it.
They so it was right on the boardwalk. And in June of 95, this
Did it
place
just sell like WrestleMania and stuff like that? Did it sell like TV, wrestling TV?
Commercial tapes, yeah. These were all commercial tapes.
Just commercial. So just
yeah.
like WrestleMania and SummerSlam and stuff like that.
Exactly. It wasn't like the Rob Feinstein stuff where
Right. Okay.
Independent, all on blank tapes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they also ran a wrestling school out of there. So on Wednesdays, and me and Steve Stallion went up there Wednesdays, Friday, Saturday, and we stayed there until Sunday and came back. So we would go on a Wednesday evening, we go train for a few hours, and then Friday night we go and train. If there was any shows, then we would stay for the show. If there wasn't, we just drive back. But the main thing was Saturday. Saturday afternoon we train. Saturday night we stay for the show, and we sleep on the beach.
Because we had just you and Steve
Stallion.
Just you and Donnie, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever you want to call them, yeah.
It's the thing is there are guys that I like when I started with that I always refer to them as their work names, their wrestling names. And Steve Stallion, and the reason why I refer to Donnie as Steve Stallion is Steve Stallion and Donnie, two different people. Donnie is humble, kind, good kid, funny. We were roommates for about 6 months and we had a blast. Steve Stein's an asshole. He's a prick.
I've noticed that. I noticed a lot of people didn't like Steve before Primal, and then he started Primal. Whenever we met him, they were like, "Wow, I thought he was gonna be such an asshole." And then I went to work for him, and he was like so cool and open, and he was like really cool. Like, and we didn't expect that.
And what does that say?
Because he was Donnie when they went to work for him, but he was Steve when they were working him in the ring, or he was, when he was working, he was Steve. But then when he was running Primal, he was Donnie. That's how I took it.
He worked his gimmicks so good,
right? Because he was good at it.
That people would be in the locker room saying, "Oh, here comes the asshole," but they didn't know him. I knew him since we were 6 years old. We went to Catholic school together, so I knew who he was. So the Steve Stein persona, sometimes he would take it to a little too much. He'd take it out of the ring. Sometimes he would take it to the clubs or the bars we go to.
It's hard to draw that line, though. It probably is. It's hard to draw that line to where do I stop this? It's like MJF right now. He's the best in the business. But I'm sure at times it's hard to go, dude, stop. And it's like, but do you? Because if he does, then he's also killing the character. So where does he stop doing that? It's hard to say exactly where that line is. Should be. Does he not flip off that little kid? Or does he see you go, yeah, he's living it? Or does he not do it?
The kid gets a picture with MJF because his parents know who MJF is.
Right.
They know what to expect.
But there's a bunch of them videos out there and stuff, and walking around, and
there's a video that came out with a little girl, him some crap, and he's giving it back, and he's like making fun of her shirt, and she's giving it back to him, and
that one 100% he should do it,
and let me tell you something, that little girl cut a better promo on him with comebacks than most guys do on the mic with him,
right?
And he did his job 110% perfect. He engaged with her when he signed her autographs and stuff like that. He's like, "And what's your name? How old are you?" 11 years. She's 11. He goes, "I'm 11. Do you know your dad made a mistake 11 years ago?"
Yeah. But if that wasn't at a contract signing, if that was just like at a restaurant or something, but a camera was on you, how should he react?
Yeah.
That's a 50-50, you know what I mean? To me, if a camera's on you, I don't know.
Me personally,
if
the camera on, character.
Right, that's what I say. But a lot of people should say he shouldn't because he's not in a wrestling surrounding.
Now,
without the camera, that's a different story. But with the camera on, but even without the camera, if you don't know the camera's here, that don't mean there isn't a camera there. That don't mean the guy behind me isn't filming it that I don't see. Because 9 times out of 10, there probably is a camera on you nowadays. I mean, back in 85, there probably wasn't, but now there probably is. That's weird. Yeah. Back in 85, they wouldn't have broke character. Today they would, but today there'd be a camera on you. In 95, there wouldn't have been.
I know I'm jumping everywhere, but you brought that up where New Jack. Perfect example of New Jack. I met New Jack through Jose Perez and Claudia, because when the Kulash trial was going on, Jose testified, and that's how he met New Jack through that, and Devon and everything.
Yeah, I talked to Jose about that. I interviewed him too.
Was that?
I said I talked to him about that. I interviewed Jose too. Half an interview. I got to finish him too.
When Jose introduced me to New Jack, it was a pay-per-view the day before Easter, I think it was, or the day after Easter, 2000. And we went down for this show, the pay-per-view and stuff, and introduced me to New Jack, and New Jack's cool, And then we go up to the room and we're sitting there talking to him. And I swear to God, it's like talking to someone you've known for years. Very, very professional, perfect gentleman. So when Primal stopped, there's a lot to talk about Primal, but when Primal used New Jack one night, I'm not sure if it was Webster, Mass, but before the show, me and Kevin Charisma, who's Jose's brother-in-law, and Jack was like, I'm hungry. Do you know any places? Well, we found a nice Italian restaurant across the street. And I say nice, crystal glasses, nice plates, fancy. I'm like, but Jack's dressed pretty, appropriate for it, but we're not. But we go in and everything. We're just sitting there talking, eating some food. And Jack is just telling stories, talking like a normal human being. And this guy comes over, and I'm sorry, the waitress comes over, and he says, "Excuse me, are you New Jack?" And New Jack is kind of, I think Jose's better at explaining this. New Jack is kind of funny, and he goes, "Maybe, why is she asking? Is there a cop looking for him?" And he's like, "Maybe." And she says, "Well, there's a gentleman in the other room who's here eating with his son, and they're going to a wrestling show tonight." And his son said, "Dad, that's New Jack." And the father's like, "No, that's not New Jack. He might look like New Jack, but that's not New Jack." So I told him I'd come over and ask. And once New Jack found out that there was a young fan with a Gangsters t-shirt from ECW, and the kid had to be about 10 years old, Jack got up, went over to him, took pictures, gave autographs, joked around with him and everything. And that's not a side of New Jack that anybody sees.
Right.
When they show the dark side of wrestling, and he's talking about cocaine and this, that, the other drugs, that's New Jack. That's not Jerome. That's
Right.
You got Stubby C. Stein and you got Donald DeLuca. Two different
In a
people.
way, I don't think New Jack likes people to see that side of him a lot of times. Don't like the fans to see that side. And he wants you to see it and me to see it and Jose to see it, but he don't want the public to necessarily see that too much.
When New Jack came down for a show, he stayed at Jose's house. He made oxtail. And I got invited to the
Pretty
house.
Boy was telling me about this.
Oh my God, this man can cook.
He said, "You want me to cook? You don't think I can cook? I'll cook you. I'll cook for you."
Yep. Pretty Boy, his wife Sandy, I think Kevin Charisma, his wife. And I remember New Jack was playing video games with Jose's son, Ricky. And Ricky had to be about 10 years old at this time. And they were playing a Madden NFL game. And Ricky beats New Jack. And Ricky's like, busting his chops, like, "Yo, I just kicked your ass." And New Jack just looks at him and goes, "Go away." But
who was it? I think it was it Pretty Boy? Or maybe it was Jose. It was one of them said when I asked them what their memories of New Jack was, they were like, "To be honest, it was how good he was with my kids." And that's what I remember most about him.
When you would see New Jack with Jose's kids and stuff, he was like a little kid. When he's playing video games with Ricky, a 10-year-old kid, and Jack's like, "Oh, you're gonna get it now," and he's like, it was like watching a little kid have fun. We did a show. This was definitely Webster, Mass, and I drove Jack there, and I'm thinking I know what Jack likes. Jack likes funk music. He likes George.
Clinton?
Jesus, yes, Booty Collins, George Clinton. So I had a box of DVDs with me, and I tried to get stuff that I thought he'd rap. Stuff
Gray,
that I think
Snoop, Tupac, yeah.
Yes. And I said, "Hey, Jack," I said, "I got some DVDs in the box, help yourself," whatever. He goes, he's going through the DVDs. He goes, "Oh, it's pretty good. George Clinton, oh, it's good. Yeah, I've heard this a million times." But you got anything else? I'm like, I got some of the glove compartment. And he goes, "Marvin fucking Gaye." Yes.
Yeah.
So we listened to the best of Marvin Gaye, and he's like singing along and everything. And I'm laughing my ass off. Well, later that night, he was hungry. He wanted chicken wings. And there's only one place in Providence, things like Wings to Go or Wings and Company, they're open till like 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is like a college town, college area. So we go to this place and he orders his wings and everything like that. And Jose and Claudia join us. And we're sitting there, and it was wintertime. And Jack's got a beanie hat on, right? So it's covering his head. And he's all dressed in a coat and everything. He's cold. And we're just sitting there talking. And I noticed it first. And then Jack caught on. There's a kid like grilling him. There's a kid with his friends, about a table of 8, college kids, drunk. And this kid is staring at New Jack like he won't take his eyes off him. So Jack stares back at him. And Jack goes, "What's up?" And the kid goes, "Sorry, you just look like New Jack." And he goes, "Who?" "Well, New Jack." He goes, "Who's that?" "He's a professional wrestler." And Jack rips his hat off. He goes, "Do I look like New Jack, a professional wrestler?" Because when he rips his hat off, you see his head, you know it's New Jack. And the kid was like, and Jack's laughing, but Jack tries to not, you're going back to what you're saying. Jack likes to fuck with people. Excuse my language, but he likes to mess with people. And that night I was driving him back to Jose's house, and on if you notice, Don Vega just cut a promo on Savio Vega, and where he taped that promo, we were going on this. It's a hill that looks over the city of Providence. So at night it's lit up really, really nice and everything. And as we're driving, I'm going on this hill where Vega did his promo, and Jack goes, "Wow, that looks beautiful." And then he just turns to me and he goes, "If you ever tell somebody I said something was beautiful, I'll kill you." So it's like, I'm not gonna tell nobody, Jack. But Jack was a good guy. And
Like, let him hear this.
Yeah. And exactly. I'm a nobody. I never made it past, I never wrestled for any big companies. And Jack really, he treated us all like we were one of his boys, and especially Jose and Claudia, they're really close with Jack. Before Jack passed, he actually came up here and went out with Jose and Claudia. And he was doing good with his life, his health and everything. And there are things that Jack would talk about with Jose and Claudia that he would never talk about with anybody. When me and Jose, when we were all down in Pennsylvania for that, it was the pay-per-view where Tommy beat Taz for the belt, and then Justin Credible came out and beat Tommy Dreamer for the heavyweight championship belt. But I know it was 2000. That night, New Jack wrestled, I think, DeVito, Angel, and somebody else. And he got clocked with a radio and knocked him silly. So they do the match, they finish up the match, and we go to the hotel, and Atlas Security, that's the security that ECW used. They got the turtlenecks. So we go to the hotel room with New Jack, and he actually asked Atlas Security to leave the room, and he just sat down and broke down with me and Jose. He's like, "I don't know how much more I can take," because I'm going. He was already blind in one eye from the Vic Grimes. Yeah, I was there that night in Connecticut. A friend of mine, his sister was actually engaged to Spike Dudley, and Spike had gotten his tickets, and our seats were in the bleachers right by the scaffold. And Jack hit his, when they went down, you saw Jack's head, and Jack tells it in interviews, he had brain matter coming out. It was bad. They thought he was gone. But luckily, he got out of it okay. But I lost my place. I'm sorry. I know we're talking about New Jack.
Were you there at that point after you got landed on? Were you with New Jack?
I was with it was me. Spike Dudley had broke his leg, so he was out, but he sat with me. It was me, my friend Matt, which is Spike Dudley's sister's brother, Spike, and his fiance at the time. And we just sat there, and when they cleared everybody out of that area and they went to the next match, we knew something was wrong. We didn't know exactly what was going on with New Jack, but Spike was getting updates. But it was scary, you know. It was really, really scary. One of the things I kind of made notes. Like I said, I'm going to be over the place.
Oh, we have been.
It's okay. It's cool.
This is Kick-Ass Kyle Storm, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. You like independent wrestling? You like women's wrestling? Hardcore? Shoot interviews? Check out Chop's videos. You'll love what you see.
What's up, guys? Teddy Goods here, and for all of you who are junkies of early 90s independent wrestling, especially from the New England area, I need to let you guys know about Chop's videos on YouTube. I am a subscriber, and I watch his videos frequently. Tons of NEWA stuff, Tony Rumble stuff, CWA, Primal Conflict, just all kinds of hidden gems. A few matches of myself early in my career, so check it out. Chop's videos on YouTube. Have a good one, guys.